This was the first time the girl was street soliciting. A helpful colleague raised her hand, then lifted her skirt to strike a seductive pose, and finally extended her hand towards passers-by. She had to be more eye-catching to compete with the girl next door. This was a girl sold into a brothel, and this was the customer-attracting procedure she had to go through. Just then, an old man passed by the entrance. Seeing how young and inexperienced the girl looked, he knew it was her first time and immediately became her first customer. Ganga was the first to get a customer within 3 minutes of street soliciting. That night, the madam received a hefty reward and took 20% of it to give to Ganga. But Ganga set the money on fire. Ganga told the madam that she wanted to burn away her past self. This fire burned away Ganga's innocent past. That night, she changed her name to Gangu. She not only carved out a place for herself in the red light district, but also became a powerful underworld queen who controlled the red light district of India. Even more legendary is that this story is based on the true experiences of the Queen of Mumbai. A woman who was sold into a brothel for 87 rupees eventually not only became the head of her district in India, but also gained both wealth and power, becoming the revered Gangubai for many women. Adding Bai after a woman's name in India means to honor her as a divine figure. Gangu completely deserved this title because she was the only prostitute received by the president and the first person to legalize the red light district. To this day, statues of Gangu Bai are still worshipped by many women. Gangu was originally a wealthy girl from a high-class family. Her father was a lawyer, and Gangu's dream was to become a movie star. Her boyfriend, Nick, knowing this, said his aunt was a film producer and could provide Gangu with opportunities. So Gangu stole jewelry from her family and followed Nick to seek out his aunt. But after Nick led Gangu into an old building, he left on an excuse. Then 2 burly men appeared. Gangu was very scared and quickly ran into a small room. But as soon as she entered, the door was locked from the outside. Gangu was so frightened that she cried out for help. After being locked in the small, dark room for 2 days and 2 nights, Gangu learned that Nick had sold her for 1,000 rupees, and Sheila was not his aunt, but the madam of this brothel. Seeing Ganga's strong-willed nature, Sheila immediately splashed water on her face. Sheila told Ganga that this was a brothel. Ganga had 2 days to decide whether or not to obey. Gangu's hope of escape was completely shattered, because in India, a woman who has been in a brothel is a disgrace to her family and would be hanged if she returned home. To survive, she had no choice but to stay and become a prostitute. Gangu could only numbly put on makeup and begin her career in the trade. Because of her aristocratic background and extraordinary temperament, Gangu quickly became the top earner. From then on, whenever she went out on the street, men would chase after her asking her to work overtime. Gangu felt deeply insulted. She desperately fought off the man, but others just looked at her as a crazy woman throwing a fit. Gangu then realized that prostitutes had absolutely no human rights. From that point on, she completely let go and started taking on prominent and influential men, finding ways to extract wealth from them. Soon, she was adorned in gold and silver, her financial resources second only to Sheila. But Gangu was much more generous than Sheila. She always shared the gold jewelry that customers gave her as tips with her sisters. Gangu also told her close sisters that she would buy this brothel within 5 years. Unexpectedly, as soon as Gangu finished speaking, Sheila appeared at the door. She urged the girls to quickly go out and solicit customers, but Gangu demanded a day off to rest. They worked day and night. Who could endure that? Gangu argued her case with reason, and her influence clearly surpassed Sheila's. This made Sheila hold a grudge. At 4 o'clock that same night, a menacing-looking man arrived at the brothel. Sheila knew this was a perverted customer, and she immediately made Gangu take him. But after Gangu entered the room, the man pulled out a gun. Gangu realized something was wrong and quickly moved towards the door. But the man forced her into a corner. The man grabbed Gangu's hair and violently slammed her against the wall. Gangu's cries of distress instantly echoed throughout the brothel. Everyone quickly gathered at the door, but Sheila deliberately delayed, waiting until Gangu let out a heart-wrenching scream. Gangu was eventually beaten black and blue, needing 15 stitches on her body and 4 stitches on her mouth. Sheila showed no remorse. Instead, she warned Gangu that there are inherent risks in this line of work, and you become more resilient with experience. But Gangu remained silent. She earned money for Sheila, but Sheila had delivered her to a pervert. While Gangu was recovering in the hospital, the nurse disliked her status, even threw her into a storage room. But Gangu didn't succumb to this. Instead, she found out the identity of the man who assaulted her. He was a subordinate of Karim Lala, the leader of the Mumbai underworld. Although Karim Lala had connections in both legal and illegal circles, he highly valued integrity, giving him great prestige. Even the police had to show him respect. Gangu then waited on the road leading to the church. Karim Lala did not disregard Gangu because of her low status. After finishing his prayers, he solemnly received Gangu. Gangu suddenly ripped off her sari, instantly stunning Karim Lala. It wasn't because of Gangu's beautiful figure, but because of the long scar running across her entire upper body, inflicted by one of his men. Karim Lala had never seen such cruel methods before. He couldn't help but examine the woman in front of him. She was the top earner in the red light district, but now her body was ruined, and her career was over. Karim Lala offered her money, but Gangu refused. She wasn't there to extort money but to seek justice. Karim Lala admired such a woman and immediately took her in as his adopted sister. Subsequently, Karim Lala sent people to protect Gangu 24 hours a day. However, Gangu kept this a secret and didn't tell Sheila. Seeing that Gangu had almost fully recovered, Sheila actually called that perverted man back again. Gangu demanded 4 times the price, but Sheila said the man had already prepared the money. The other girls all advised Gangu not to go, but Gangu, with a calm expression, went into that room again. However, the man was even more vicious than before. As soon as Gangu entered, he started hitting her. Sheila turned up the volume of the radio, trying to cover Gangu's screams. But just then, a luxury car sped up and stopped in front of the brothel. It was Karim Lala. He ordered his men to drag the perverted man out and then repeatedly beat his head against the ground, until the perverted man was covered in blood and gore. Everyone was so frightened that they dared not make a sound, because they knew that Karim Lala was standing up for Gangu. And Gangu had taken a dangerous gamble by going to Karim Lala, all for this moment. She wanted everyone to know that although she was a weak woman, she had a powerful man behind her who could be an umbrella of protection for all the sisters. Seeing this, Sheila panicked immensely. She suspected that Karim Lala was making an example of the perverted man. Due to excessive fear, Sheila actually fell seriously ill. But then, a customer came and requested Gangu's services. However, Gangu was no longer under Sheila's control. Not wanting to miss out on this income, Sheila had no choice but to go herself. But she suddenly died in bed. Everyone called Gangu to handle Sheila's funeral arrangements. Seeing the countless private riches Sheila had accumulated, Gangu distributed benefits to the sisters. The brothel's first dividend further won Gangu the hearts of the people. The sisters brought white saris and requested her to take charge of the brothel and become their madam. While this outcome had elements of Gangu's clever management, it was more so a result of popular will, because Gangu was indeed exceptionally capable. Previously, 40% of the brothel's income had to be given to the police. But Gangu, using her status as Karim Lala's adopted sister to exert pressure, reclaimed this portion from the police, which was unprecedented in the history of the red light district. From then on, whenever Gangu went out, people respectfully addressed her as Madam Gangubai. Men were even more respectful towards her, and no one dared to desecrate her anymore. Gangu deeply experienced the self-respect and honor that came with power. Moreover, the madams of other brothels also began to ask Gangu to discipline newly arrived girls. But Gangu never coerced these girls. Instead, she gave them the opportunity to choose, whether to stay here to earn money and survive, or to go home and be sold again or hanged. As long as the girl chose to go home, Gangu respected her wishes. But the madam disagreed, wanting the girl to earn enough money, 1,000 rupees. However, Gangu directly gave the madam 10,000 rupees. Subsequently, Gangu took the girl away, and then had the brothel's caretaker escort her home. The caretaker couldn't understand why Gangu always spent so much money to save these ungrateful girls. Gangu smiled mysteriously and told the caretaker that this was politics. The politics Gangu spoke of was running for the head of the red light district. Only by holding real power in her hands could she benefit the women of the entire red light district. Therefore, she had to act with high visibility, creating momentum and establishing her image in advance. However, Gangu's competitor, Razia, was very powerful. He was a transgender person born under religious beliefs, always deeply respected, and he had already been re-elected for 3 consecutive terms. The election this year hadn't even arrived, but Razia was already holding street demonstrations, which put a lot of pressure on Gangu. She had to overshadow Razia to have a chance of winning. But Gangu disdained those flashy, superficial displays. If she was going to do something, she would do something substantial. So, she went to Karim Lala again and introduced the liquor business under his control into the brothel. Beauty paired with fine wine was a perfect business combination. Soon, the liquor became even more popular than the girls. Thus, Gangu earned her second fortune in life. She would use this money to defeat Razia. The respect Karim Lala showed Gangu deeply moved her. She gently touched the tip of Karim Lala's foot to express her admiration and gratitude. Unexpectedly, Karim Lala then gave her a luxury car and told her to go all out in the election. The red light district had been corrupt for a long time and desperately needed a leader. But Razia, in order to extinguish Gangu's election momentum, actually reported Gangu for selling alcohol during Prohibition. The police then raided the brothel for inspection, but Gangu was very calm because she had long understood these police officers. This result was something Razia hadn't anticipated. He realized that Gangu had some tricks up her sleeve, so he went to see her in person. He wanted her to directly feel the pressure from religious authority. He told Gangu that he had eliminated many people who had opposed him. But Gangu wasn't intimidated. Instead, While Razia was giving his campaign speech, she bought all the film reels in the city and invited everyone to watch movies for free. This resulted in no one attending Razia's carefully prepared speech. But just as Razia was furious, a luxury car drove over. It was Gangu. Her eyes were arrogant. Her steps were firm, and she exuded the aura of a queen. Gangu told Razia that he would soon be replaced. She was going to hold a wedding in the brothel, but Razia thought this was impossible. Defeating a strong opponent through direct attacks is too exhausting. The most concise and effective way is to defeat the impossible in the opponent's mind. What Gangu needed to do was hold a wedding in the brothel, and the bride she chose was a girl locked in an iron cage. This girl, named Lisa, was the daughter of an old prostitute, because the men who came in and out of this place every day had malicious intentions. Every time before her mother went to entertain a customer, she would give Lisa a pill and lock her in an iron cage on the roof to protect her from being discovered by the men. Because the daughters of Indian prostitutes have only two fates. One is to abandon her and let her fend for herself. The other is to follow in her mother's footsteps and rot in the red light district for the rest of her life. Although her mother carefully protected her, Lisa was already 15 years old, the age for marriage. She either had to be married off or killed. Naturally, the girl didn't want her to become a prostitute. India's deeply ingrained caste system meant that no one would marry the daughter of a prostitute. But Gangu thought of an excellent candidate, a young tailor named Bade, who worked at a tailor shop. She had met him when getting her clothes made. Bade was particularly innocent and pure. Merely taking measurements would make him blush and his heart race. This reminded Gangu of her long-dormant girlish heart. Although she had a wealth of experience, she was only 27 years old and still held onto a pure love deep inside. Thus, the naive young man fell in love with the mature and charming madam. But other than embracing, they had no other intimate interactions, because Gangu knew that neither her age nor her status made it possible for her to marry Bade. Therefore, she might as well do a good deed and choose a good wife for him. So, Gangu took Lisa to Bade's house to propose marriage. The dowry was 350 grams of gold and 50,000 rupees in cash. Bade didn't agree, but Bade's mother's eyes lit up at the sight of the money. Bade was very sad. He felt his sincerity had been trampled upon and that he had become purely a transaction for Gangu. But Gangu firmly stated that this was not a transaction, but the best arrangement for both of them. Bade understood Gangu's unspoken words. He felt powerless and anxious, but Gangu turned and left. This marriage had to be mutually willing. Bade still chased after her. He couldn't accept being abandoned like this. But the young man's passionate love was only a corner in Gangu's heart, not the whole thing. Gangu said the harshest words. But she also felt terrible inside. She truly loved Bade, but those who want to achieve great things cannot stop because of petty romantic feelings. There was a greater and more far-reaching meaning in her path ahead. The next day, Lisa was married off from the brothel in a grand and unprecedented ceremony. This caused a huge sensation, and Gangu accomplished something almost impossible. But the more glamorous it was in public, the more painful it was in private. How could she be indifferent when the person she loved was getting married? Gangu covered her face with her sari and sobbed uncontrollably, but she only allowed herself 1 minute to grieve, because the past was already a memory, and what lay ahead was opportunity. Due to the enormous impact of holding a wedding in the brothel, Gangu successfully defeated Razia and became the new head of the red light district. But her victory wasn't entirely due to strategy and courage. More importantly, it was due to her inner spirit. Regardless of her circumstances, Gangu always upheld 3 principles with humility and integrity. First, continuously improve the quality of service. Even if the work was despised, she still treated it with dedication and conscientiousness. Second, fully embrace and express oneself. Women are like flowers, whether growing in a temple or a toilet. Their fragrance is innate, so don't bury your potential. Third, respect and love yourself, and fear no one, because every penny she earned was through her own hard work. This spirit deeply infected other women. In Gangu, they saw the perseverance and unyieldingness of a warrior. Yet even so, prostitution was still the lowest of professions. Banks refused to open accounts for them, reasoning that their money was of illicit origin and would taint the money of other depositors. Even their own parents wished they would just die on the spot. Many years later, when Gangu finally had the courage to call her mother, the moment she heard her mother's voice, the strength Gangu had been forcing herself to maintain instantly crumbled. She was just a child who had wandered away from home. Gangu didn't even get to finish speaking. Her mother hung up the phone. How much she wanted to tell her mother what she had experienced all these years, and how difficult and arduous the road she had walked had been. But from the moment she stepped out of the house, Her mother had erased her from her heart. Although it was what she had expected, Gangu was still heartbroken. From the moment she stepped into the brothel, the secular world severed her ties with her entire family. But the women in the red light district were not willing to degenerate. Most of them were sold here by their parents or husbands. They were marginalized and abused, and when their survival was in question, what did their bodies matter? But no one felt sorry for them. Even more hateful was that government officials, in order to seize the land of the brothels and develop a commercial district, actually incited the public to jointly sign a petition to drive all the women from the red light district on the grounds that they would negatively influence nearby students. But there were almost no jobs available for women in India. So the ultimate result of the expulsion would be to force them to their deaths. Gangu then took the children of the brothel sisters and, in their mother's stead, went to see the principal to request their admission to school. As long as the school was willing to accept them, the rumors would be refuted without argument. But as soon as Gangu took out the tuition fees, the principal sternly refused. The reporter, Phil, watching Gangu, felt admiration well up within him. This woman who stood up against slanderous rumors and worked hard to support other people's children, her character and vision far surpassed any contempt. Phil followed her to the brothel, wanting to interview Gangu, but just then, the children returned. It turned out that the teacher had kicked them out. Gangu asked the reporter to take a picture of them. This photo had to appear in magazines so that the whole world could see it. The photo Phil took soon appeared on the magazine cover, but Gangu's brothel closed down at this time. A prostitute named Katia suddenly passed away during childbirth. So Gangu closed the business to hold a funeral for her. The sisters gathered around, dressing Katia beautifully. For them, death was not necessarily a bad thing. At least it was a way to escape this kind of life. After Katia's burial, Phil finally found Gangu. He kept his promise, and indeed published her picture with the children on the cover of a national magazine. Such explosive content immediately sparked widespread discussion about the education of prostitutes. Gangu's legendary experiences were even more talked about by people. Phil then suggested that Gangu strike while the iron was hot and use her celebrity effect to participate in a women's rights speech. This way, she could use a larger platform to speak out for the women in the red light district and their children. This would be a voice, rising straight from the mud to the clouds. Given that it was Gangu's first speech, Phil even wrote a draft for her. Gangu memorized it all the way. But when she was about to go on stage to give her speech, the introducer was incredibly awkward because of Gangu's disgraceful identity. But Gangu, like a seasoned veteran, resolved this awkward situation with an air of authority. Then Gangu took out the speech draft and prepared to speak. But those grand and formal words couldn't express what she truly felt in her heart at all. What she wanted to say wasn't on the paper, but the life she and her sisters had actually experienced. Everyone present today is an outstanding representative of various industries. They have respectable jobs and substantial incomes. But there are also jobs in this world that are not respectable. Gangu's speech won thunderous applause. At the same time, it won respect and human rights for the women and children of the red light district. Gangu had waited 15 years for this day. Tears of emotion streamed down her face. Soon, a politician recognized her ability. He wanted Gangu to mobilize the women of the red light district to campaign for his upcoming election. And in return, he would introduce Gangu to the president. This was Gangu's final step, connecting to the political sphere and entering politics by standing on the shoulders of giants. With Gangu's full support, the politician successfully won the election, and Gangu was about to meet the president, but she suddenly felt sad. She hadn't left the brothel in 15 years, because she hoped to see the boyfriend who had sold her back then. She wanted to know if her boyfriend's betrayal was planned from the beginning or if he acted impulsively due to lack of money. But at this moment, no matter the reason, it was no longer important. Because Gangu was no longer an individual, but a representative of a large group of people, the hope of the women and children in the entire red light district. She only had 15 minutes. If the president couldn't be persuaded, the women and children of the red light district would be expelled. So, when she met the president, Gangu went straight to the point and explained her intentions. She hoped to legalize the prostitution industry. The president fell into deep thought. The country had indeed neglected this group of objectively existing but powerless poor women. He granted Gangu's request to preserve and legalize the red light district. Long live India! The president pinned the red rose from his chest onto Gangu's chest as a sign of his respect for her. But the women who fell into the red light district were never red roses, but black roses blooming from a place of death. They were sorrowful and weak, yet proudly open. They wept tears of blood, yet were tenacious and unyielding. Gangu worked step by step for 15 years, finally regaining the dignity they had lost and giving the children an equal way out. Gangu's unyielding spirit lifted the future of the entire red light district, but she was destined not to go down in official history because prejudice was deeply rooted. And even though the law had changed, it would take a very long time for people's inner beliefs to change. However, Gangu's perseverance and dedication had already been deeply etched in people's hearts. Movie star posters were changed every Friday, but Gangubai was different. Her photo stayed on the wall in Kamatapura for 50 years. She wanted to be a movie star, but her life became like a movie.